Welcome back to World News Tennis, where we uncover what's really happening behind the ATP headlines. Carlos Alcaraz is starting the 2026 season with something different in his eyes. A fire that is sharper, heavier, almost personal. A fire that points to one place and one place only, Melbourne. Because for all the trophies he has lifted, for all the finals he has won, for all the records he has already broken at just 22 years old, there is one missing piece. One wound that has been open for years, one Grand Slam he has never conquered. The Australian Open. The trophy that has escaped him again and again. The trophy he needs to complete the career Grand Slam and enter an exclusive list of legends. And Carlos Alcaraz knows this year is different. This year is destiny. He arrives in 2026 with a mix of hunger, pressure and conviction that feels almost dangerous. Because after winning Roland Garros and the US Open in 2025 and finishing the season back at world number 1, the Mercian has a clear mission. Finish the circle. Complete the Grand Slam. Become the youngest in history to ever do it. And that mission begins in Melbourne. The scars from last year still burn. Alcaraz entered the 2025 Australian Open as a top favorite. But in the quarterfinals he ran straight into Novak Djokovic, the emperor of Rod Laver Arena. The match was brutal, tactical, suffocating. Alcaraz fought with all his creativity, all his explosiveness, all his courage. But Djokovic was Djokovic. Precision, rhythm, experience. A wall that refused to crack. The defeat hurt, and it stayed with him. Because while Alcaraz packed his bags, his greatest rival Jannik Sinner completed a historic run and lifted the title, defeating Alexander Zverev with authority. The Italian didn't just win. He made a statement. He put a flag in Melbourne and said, "This is my territory now." For Alcaraz, that moment was gasoline. Not anger, but ambition. Not jealousy, but destiny calling. Because the rivalry between Alcaraz and Sinner is not just competition. It is the story that defines modern tennis. Federer versus Nadal. Djokovic versus Murray. Sampras versus Agassi. And now, Alcaraz versus Sinner. Two young giants fighting for the same crown, the same era, the same legacy. And only one will become the youngest player in history to complete the career Grand Slam. That player could be Carlos Alcaraz. He has said it openly. Completing the Grand Slam is very important to me. I really want to win the Australian Open someday. And the truth is simple. 2026 is the perfect storm. His preparation feels sharper. His physical shape looks explosive. His team knows he is standing at the edge of history. Alcaraz starts the new season not just with talent, but with purpose, with obsession, with a maturity that very few 22-year-olds have ever shown in this sport. Because Melbourne is calling, and destiny is waiting. Carlos Alcaraz enters 2026 with something more dangerous than talent: clarity. Because while most players begin a new season shaking off the rust, adapting to travel, adjusting to rhythm, Alcaraz does the opposite. His engine starts fast. His intensity rises instantly. His body responds like a machine built for early season explosions. And that is exactly why Melbourne feels like destiny this year. Alcaraz is not just chasing the Australian Open. He is chasing the missing chapter of a story that could define the next decade of tennis. The empty space in his trophy cabinet. Since he broke into the ATP elite, every season has ended with journalists asking the same question. When will Alcaraz win the Australian Open? And every year, the answer has been the same. Not yet. He has conquered Roland Garros. He has conquered Wimbledon. He has conquered the US Open, twice. But Australia remains untouchable, like a mountain that refuses to let him climb. And the longer that gap stays open, the more symbolic it becomes. Because for Alcaraz, this isn't just about winning a title. It's about sealing his identity. It's about completing the map. It's about entering a club that only 4 legends have ever joined. Agassi, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. Players who didn't just dominate, they defined eras. Alcaraz stands one step away from them. And he wants that step to happen now. The rivalry that fuels him. And then there's the shadow that follows him everywhere. Jannik Sinner. Two opposites. Two superpowers. Two destinies colliding. Sinner is discipline, precision, geometry. Alcaraz is chaos, creativity, explosion. And together, they have created the most perfect rivalry tennis has seen since the golden days of the Big Three. Their battles are mathematical. Their scores, almost scripted. Their intensity, unmatched. When they face each other, something special happens. The sport stops, the world watches, and history breathes. And for 2026, that rivalry has reached a new level. Because while Alcaraz is chasing the career Grand Slam, Sinner is chasing his own legacy with Roland Garros. Both want history. Both want domination. Both want the crown of their generation. But only one can create a moment that will last forever. And Alcaraz knows the opportunity is his. The pressure of the chosen one. There is another layer to this story. The expectations. People don't just want Alcaraz to win. They expect him to win. They assume he will dominate the next decade. They talk about him as the natural successor to Nadal, to Federer, to Djokovic. And yet, Alcaraz refuses the comparison. He doesn't want to be the next anyone. He wants to be the first Alcaraz. He wants to write his own era, not inherit one. That's why Melbourne holds such power. That's why this specific trophy feels like fate. Because lifting the Australian Open wouldn't just be another win. It would redefine his entire legacy. It would turn potential into proof, ambition into achievement, promise into permanence. The preparation of a future legend. Behind closed doors, Alcaraz's team has been preparing Melbourne like a military operation. Studying court speed, analyzing ball behavior in extreme heat, reviewing every tactical detail of his past losses, optimizing training loads for maximum explosiveness, building emotional resilience for 2 weeks of tension and chaos. They know Australia is a tournament of endurance, a mental and physical desert where only warriors survive. And they believe Alcaraz is ready to conquer it. Because this isn't just another season. This isn't just another tournament. This isn't just another January. This is the beginning of Alcaraz's biggest mission yet, the mission to make history. And the world is watching. 2026 arrives with a pressure that only true champions can tolerate. Not the pressure of the media or the pressure of fans, but the pressure that comes from inside. The pressure of chasing something that almost no one in history has touched. Because when we talk about Carlos Alcaraz and the Australian Open, we're not talking about a simple Grand Slam. We're talking about the missing piece of a puzzle that could elevate him into a different dimension. A dimension where records don't just break, they transform eras. And that is exactly what makes this season special. The landscape of danger. The path to Melbourne glory is not an empty road. 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most dangerous years in men's tennis. Jannik Sinner in full prime, hungry to defend his territory. Alexander Zverev still unpredictable, explosive, capable of shutting down any rhythm. Daniil Medvedev, the master of hard courts, always ready to dismantle aggressive players. Holger Rune, chaotic, fiery, and increasingly dangerous in fast conditions. Stefanos Tsitsipas, searching for redemption and a return to the top. And a new wave of explosive young hitters determined to shock the rankings. Every match in Australia is a minefield. Every round is a battle for survival. Every point is a test. But what separates Alcaraz from the rest is that he doesn't just survive these environments. He thrives in them. He adapts in seconds. He changes patterns on the fly. He transforms matches with pure instinct and fearless aggression. That is the DNA of a future all-time great. The evolution of his game. Something has changed in Alcaraz's tennis. Something subtle but decisive. He is no longer playing to entertain. He is playing to dominate. He has become more selective with his shot-making, more patient when the moment requires control, and more ruthless when it's time to accelerate. His aggression is more calculated. His risk-taking is more strategic. His explosiveness is more measured. Experience has given him something priceless. Judgment in the chaos. And that judgment will be vital in Melbourne, where matches often become survival marathons under 38-degree heat, punishing rallies, and constant tactical tension. The Carlos Alcaraz of today is not the teenager who burst onto the scene with magic and unpredictability. This version is sharper, stronger, smarter, more complete. A contender transformed into a conqueror. The weight of legacy. What makes this season so extraordinary is that Alcaraz is not fighting for a trophy. He is fighting for a place in history. If he wins the Australian Open in 2026, he will stand alone as the youngest player to ever complete the career Grand Slam. Younger than Federer. Younger than Nadal. Younger than Djokovic. Younger than any legend who has ever ruled the sport. And in a rivalry era as brutal as the Alcaraz-Sinner era, that achievement would not only mark his greatness, it would define his era. Because eras are not built by statistics alone. They are built by moments that shift the sport forever. And Melbourne 2026 has all the ingredients to become one of those moments. A mission bigger than tennis. Behind every hour of training, behind every tactical adjustment, behind every session under the Spanish sun, there is one idea guiding Alcaraz. Win Australia. Not for the points. Not for the ranking. Not even for the trophy. But because it completes the story. Because it opens the door to the impossible. Because it would prove that the next decade belongs to him. He has the game. He has the mindset. He has the hunger. Now he needs the moment. And that moment is waiting for him in Melbourne. 2026 begins with a kind of silence that only appears before history is written. Not the silence of doubt, but the silence of destiny. Carlos Alcaraz isn't simply preparing for another season. He's preparing for a coronation. And Melbourne, Australia's brutal, merciless, magnificent Coliseum, is the only Grand Slam that has refused him. This year, that refusal might finally transform into the most powerful yes of his entire career. The weight of a generation. When Alcaraz steps onto the Rod Laver Arena for the first time in 2026, something will be different. The atmosphere. The tension. The expectations. Millions will be watching. Not simply tennis fans. People who want to witness the birth of a historic moment. Because everyone knows the truth. If Alcaraz wins Melbourne, he becomes the youngest player ever to complete the career Grand Slam. Federer didn't. Nadal didn't. Djokovic didn't. Agassi didn't. Only one man alive can do it at this age. And that man is Carlos Alcaraz. The pressure isn't a burden. It's a crown waiting to fit. The rivalry that defines an era. But 2026 isn't just the year of Alcaraz. It's the year of Alcaraz versus Sinner. A rivalry so perfect, so symmetrical, so mathematically balanced, that it already feels like Federer, Nadal 2.0. But faster, harder, and hungrier. Sinner arrives as the defending champion in Melbourne. Alcaraz arrives as the challenger who wants the throne. One plays with surgical precision. The other plays with instinctive chaos. One is ice. The other is electricity. And they know a truth that defines their generation. If one wants to rule the decade, he must stop the other. This is not a rivalry. This is evolution. The final frontier. Despite everything he has accomplished, despite Roland Garros, despite the US Open, despite his meteoric rise to world number one, there is still one door he hasn't opened. The Australian Open. It isn't just missing from his trophy cabinet. It's missing from his identity. Winning in Melbourne isn't about points. It isn't about the ranking. It isn't even about the rivalry. It's about legacy. It's about entering a room where only 4 players in history have entered, and becoming the youngest to ever claim the key. The walk into fire. When Alcaraz walks through the tunnel for his first match of 2026. When the crowd murmurs with the electricity of anticipation. When his racket starts to feel like an extension of destiny. It will no longer be just a match. It will be the beginning of a journey. A journey toward history. A journey toward immortality. A journey that only a handful of athletes in any sport ever get to attempt. Carlos Alcaraz knows what is at stake. And he is ready. Because this year is not just another season. This is the year. This is his year. This is the year Carlos Alcaraz can become a total champion. And here, at WorldNews Tennis, we will follow every point, every battle, every breath of this historic season, together.